Mom? How we doing, everybody? So, I'm in a clutch of eggs at the moment, but bear with me. Well, Troodon with me, because that's the subject of today's video. Sup with Troodon? So, I'm covering this topic because there's been a recent change in Troodon taxonomy and classification recently. But before we get into that, let's get into what Troodon is, before this one gets into me, because I'm not yours. I'm a mammal. You do know that, right? Okay. Oh, alright. So Troodon, I'm actually not a big fan of, because I'm the tail fan. I know I'm not funny. So Troodon was a troodontid theropod dinosaur, basically a small carnivorous dinosaur. It's very enigmatic, we're not exactly sure about the true size, but this animal lived in North America during the Campanian stage, around about 77.5 to 76.5 million years ago. Now, this animal lived alongside a whole host of other dinosaurs, including Pachyrhinosaurus, which you can see up there, and the fella in the far distance, that's a small tyrannosaur, about 6 to 9 meters long, called Nanoxaurus, and probably ate Troodon on occasion. Troodon itself was a small carnivore and therefore probably ate, anything from rat-sized little mammals to small lizards, small dinosaurs, just meaty bits. Lovely little bit of meat, because sharp teeth, sharp claws, meat eater. Nom 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 nom. Which probably means this fella, if I made him a bacon sarnie, I think he'd love it. He'd love a bacon sarnie, probably. And then he'd probably go for me afterwards. Ooh, it's a good thing they're not around. Now, Troodon is a very strange dinosaur because we actually don't have, we didn't have much of it up until this year. In fact, throughout Troodon's taxonomic history, we've had either very much of it or very little of it, so it really depends on the author and the interpretations of those authors. So, let's go through the history of Troodon. So, Troodon's holotype. Yeah, it's just a tooth. It's just a tooth. So this tooth was given the name Troodon back in 1856 by Joseph Leidy, who's an amazingly important person in the terms of 1800s paleontology, particularly during the Bone Wars. Now, this tooth was recovered from the Judith River Formation, particularly the part of the formation in Montana, and it dates to around the Campanian stage. So, yeah, right within Troodon. So this is definitely Troodon. Now, initially, Leidy actually interpreted this animal as a lizard. Yeah, just a lizard, yeah, that's about it. Later, in 1902, the father of Tethysaurus, Baron von Nopska, actually interpreted as a megalosaurid, which was the custom for the time because everything was a megalosaurid back then, including my good old friend Carcharodontosaurus saharicus. Yeah, everything was a megalosaurid back then. Everything. I wasn't born then. Then, Gilmore in 1924, who you might know for actually sorting out Allosaurus back in the mid-1900s, he actually interpreted it as a Stegosaurus. Yeah, pachycephalosaurid. So then Troodon became a pachycephalosaurid, which meant that the troodontids became the name for the pachycephalosaurids. Yeah, it's very confusing, basically. Basically, because Troodon was now Stegosaurus, the pachycephalosaurs weren't the pachycephalosaurs, they were actually the troodontids. Yeah, it's confusing. Then in 1932, Charles Sternberg, who was the great hunter of many mosasaur specimens, he in fact found a skeleton of a troodontid and called it Stenonychosaurus inequalis. This actually would later go on to become a species of Troodon. But this specimen actually gave a lot of clarity of what a troodontid was because there was parts of the foot, there's parts of the hand, and some of the vertebrae that were found, so they actually got a better identity and a better vision of what a troodontid looked like. Gilmore came back in 1932 and named Polyodontosaurus grandis, however he identified it as a lizard. Now, Sternberg would actually come back in 1945 and 1951. 1945 was the year that he actually said, Pachycephalosaurus allocation? Nah. This thing's a carnivorous dinosaur, mate. Nah chance. Nah, don't butt heads. Nah. And then in 1951, he actually said that Polyodontosaurus grandis is actually a synonym of Troodon, and that Troodon is actually really closely related to Stenonychosaurus, which is foreshadowing for what would happen later down the line. You're not going to like it. Now, the exquisite writer of the Mosasaur Bible, Dale Russell, would actually come in 1969 and describe a more complete specimen of Stenonychosaurus, which further improved the image of troodontids in all aspects. Except for one. Through this, he actually proposed that, hey, troodons, they're quite intelligent, maybe they would have evolved into a dinosauroid form. Yeah, it's terrifying. I actually saw a model of this back in Lyme Regis back, a couple of years ago. Terrifying. Now, this is the fun stuff. This is where it gets really fun. So, during the 80s, some workers were starting to suspect that Troodon might not be that good and might not be that diagnostic. Maybe it's dubious. Luckily though, in 1987, Curry actually came in with a paper that actually showed that, hey, a lot of these North American troodontids, they're probably not different species, they're probably actually all just Troodon, and the differences are ontogenetic, so everything goes into Troodon formus, which I think I've pronounced correctly, but basically that's the type species, that's what this is. Now, from now till about the 2010s, those species would occasionally try and creep their way back out of Troodon, but most of the time it's like, no, these are all Troodon. Now, this is actually something I didn't know until I started researching for this video, but 2011 was actually a really strong year for when workers were considering that Troodon was actually probably not that diagnostic and probably dubious. And that was from a 2011 paper which reviewed multiple Troodontid material and actually resulted in, hey, Troodon, the holotype, actually might be invalid, which I didn't know about that. I thought that was just 2017, but no, it happened 6 years before that. But yeah, 2017 rolled around and then came the paper that basically said, yeah, Troodon, it's not diagnostic, it's not good, it's just a tooth. How are we supposed to run an entire family off that? It's not good. Into the bin of invalidity, yay! I mean, you could see, like, a positive was that Troodontids, regarded as Troodon, got points in new species, and that's cool, because then the diversity went, whee! Yeah. Troodon fans, though, they weren't happy. However, the year after 2018, there was an interesting development, let's say. And that was a paper actually proposed that Stenonychosaurus, which at the time was valid, was put that, hey, this name hasn't actually been technically used in 30 years and therefore should be a synonym of Troodon. Which I'm still trying to work my head around that, but yeah, Troodon. Was it back? We don't really know. It was kind of in limbo at that time. I mean, I'm 27, I'm creeping more and more towards 30, and I know about 30 your back starts to go, so me limboing, it's probably not a pretty sight, is it now? Now I'll just sit down, I'll stay sat down and just nod my head at the bar, you know. Yes, good, yeah. However, this year, 2025, a lot of Troodon fans were really nodding their head, yes. And that's because this paper looked over Troodontid material from the Two Medicine Formation of Montana, and they actually found that, hey, there's a good specimen out there. Now, this specimen was MOR 553, and this consisted of skull bones, hip bones, and foot elements. And this was a Troodon, the genus, yes. And this was then proposed to be the neotype, a new specimen, a new holotype, if you like. Now, this has actually happened to other dinosaurs in the past. However, the difference is that the holotype of Troodon, it's not lost, it's not destroyed. It's there. Look, I found it. Hey, solved it. But this paper, whilst it does put forward a great argument, it is just basically a petition to say, hey, maybe we should shift the main specimen of Troodon to this specimen because it has all the diagnostic features and more, and those diagnostic features are in fact different from other Troodontid dinosaurs. Also, Stenonychosaurus is still a Troodon synonym. I'm sorry to the 3 Stenonychosaurus fans that have viewed this video. You know, your boy didn't make it. Sorry. But yeah, Troodon, for the most part, actually might be back. Now, whether this petition for a new specimen to be allocated to the neotype, whether that goes through, we'll just have to wait and see. But there's a pretty strong argument. The paper actually goes into a lot of detail about why Troodon should be validated, what the problems were, and how to fix it. And it's a really good read. You should go and read it. But hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Ta-da. Bye.